Hey everyone, it's Charlene. I am excited to finally get this voiceover recorded. This is the case closed release from Hero Arts. It came out just over a week ago, and I'm going to make a card. Look at this Miss Detective stamp set, and it's no mystery stamp and cut, the Magnifying Glass Die Set, and this Houndstooth layering stencil. So cute. I'm in love with this release. I'm going to start here by taking the Miss Detective stamp set. You have this gorgeous large detective gal. She's so cute. And I'm going to condition the stamp. The lines on this are a little bit thicker than some other stamps, so I want to make sure I get a really nice impression. Got my Intens-ified Black Ink here, so I'll ink this up and stamp this out. Now, this release has so many different ways you can create with it. I did the Instagram hop recently when it released, and the inspiration there is awesome. Okay, here, back to the video. I am using the residual ink that's on my stamp here to stamp on some masking paper because I'm going to show you a super cool technique to do with your stencils. Are you excited? I am. All right, I just used scraps of masking paper because I didn't want to use a whole sheet. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the area that is her little cape, and this is going to cover over the image. And now I'm going to cut out the little area that is her hat. So just going right along the lines, nothing too crazy there. I'll remove the backing off the masking paper and lay it down over my stamped image here, just making sure I see some black line all the way around. I'll do the same on this bottom piece. This is a little trickier, so I took the release paper off of one side only, so that way I could line up this side, and then I took it off of the other side. Makes it a lot easier to make sure that it lines up. So now here is that Houndstooth layering stencil. I'm going to start with one of the layers here, and we are going to create a houndstooth pattern on her little jacket or shawl. I'm not sure what you would call that. And on her hat. How fun is that? So I'm lining up my stencil in the corner with my piece of cardstock, so I'll know where the next layer goes. I've got some pinks here. You guys know I love pink. I've got peony and cotton candy, and I am just going to make sure I don't go too far because my whole background there, my whole piece is not masked, so I don't want the ink to get where it's not supposed to go. Went ahead and did a pretty heavy hand with my inking. I feel like I wanted to make sure I got in all of the nooks and crannies there. And this stencil is awesome for backgrounds as well. I saw some really cool stuff that other members of the design team did with it. And it can be done in browns and pinks. I saw red and black. You could use just one of the stencils to create a really interesting background. So I did that second layer in the other pink, and now I'm going to remove my masking tape. Sorry for the blur there for a moment. And look how cool that is. Now, something you could do is you also could go in and do a light all over with a pink if you wanted the white areas to be a little bit pink as well on that hat and on her little cape. So I'm going to come in and color her face. I am starting with 4.3. I added some shadows down underneath her hair and around on her jawline. I'm going to bring in 4.1. I'm using my Olo markers here. I'm a big fan of them. If you're new to the channel, you can go back and watch some of my other coloring videos. I really like the Olo markers, and I'm hoping to do a video here soon about their new paper that they have. So I need to get on that. Reminder, Charlene, get on that. Okay, so 4.1, coming in all the way around, not just where I had the 4.3. I'm blending the 4.3 out, but then I'm bringing the 4.1 farther in. Now I've got my 4.0, which is my lightest color of all three. Again, blending around those edges, just slightly overlapping the 4.1, and then I will continue to work my way all the way in so that I get her whole face. I'm going to do her neck, and I'll start by bringing 4.3 down beneath her neck where it would have a nice little shadow. And then I will also bring that 4.3 over where the cape is, because there'd be a little bit of shadow area there because the cape is on top of her neck. So you always want to add some shading where you're trying to indicate that something is in front of something else. I've got my 4.1. I will blend out that 4.3 going towards the center, and then I'll just have a tiny little bit of the 4.0 there in the middle as kind of a light highlight that's going to show that her neck has a little bit of curvature to it. I'll repeat that whole process a second time and get her ears. There we go. Boom, you see the magic there with the camera. Now I'm going to work on her hair, and I'm going to the next darkest color, which is 04.6. She's going to be a brunette. So I'll start again in the areas where there is overlap of something. So I'm coming underneath the hat because the hat would be in front of her hair, and then along kind of the tendrils of the hair. So there's an area where she has a tendril hanging down in front of her face, and I'm going to go along the sides of that with the 4.6. Once I've done that, I'm going to come in and I'm going to flick along the natural waves or motion of the hair in various spots with the 4.6, from kind of the bottom up and then the top down. You can see I'm making these little flick motions. I'll do the same here for the other side, then bring in 4.3, and I'll just repeat that same type of flicking motion around in various areas, coming from the bottom up and from the top down, and then bring in 4.1 for the highlight areas. These are the areas where the light would be hitting on the hair, and I'll go back and forth in those areas. Then I'll repeat that whole process a second time. You can see it really nicely blends out and builds up the hair. Now for the shirt, I'm going to use a little piece of masking tape down here at the bottom. It's not going to completely protect that area, but it will do enough. And then I end up cutting it off later anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So I've got some R5.5, which is a really gorgeous color, and coloring in those areas that would be shaded all along the inset parts of her little cape and then her little bolero or tie, whatever you would call that there. And now I've got 5.3, pulling out that color, blending it out, and then I'll bring in 5.1, again running it just along that 5.3, helping it to blend out, and then flicking it in towards the center on each side. I'll repeat that a second time and then cut this out with the coordinating die. And you can see there at the bottom, it doesn't really matter that it's not a perfectly straight line with the masking. Anyway, back to the video, Charlene. You're getting distracted. I am going to go ahead and stamp out the magnifying and the arm with the hand. And in that same Intens-ified Black ink, I'm going to color in the magnifying glass using some OR 7.2 and some 7.6, I believe, yes. And these are red oranges, so it's going to give us kind of a nice rose gold type of result, which I thought would look really nice with her pink outfit. So the 7.2 is just coming along the center of that magnifying glass handle. I very, very carefully took the 7.6 along the edges, and that's what's going to help to make it look like it's curved. So I finished coloring all that in. I'm going to use the same exact colors for the arm and hand that I did for our gal. And then there are two different die options for the magnifying glass. There's one that cuts out the center and one that doesn't. So depending on how you want to style your card, you can choose whichever one of those. I use the one that cuts out the center because I'm going to have her little arm hold it, and then we're going to see she's kind of scoping things out with her magnifying glass. Lots of fun. Now, I have here a half sheet of ivory colored cardstock, and I'm going to cut off about 1/4 of an inch. I want it to be enough that a sentiment will be able to be stamped along the edge. This will make more sense as we go along. You see that "You are awesome" there. And so I'm just measuring to make sure I have enough space to stamp it in there. And now this is the part where you have to be really careful, is cutting this. You don't want to cut too far. And I did. I cut too far. So we're going to kind of just pretend this didn't happen, because don't worry, I can save it. I can save it. I took it out here and then I looked with my stamps and I could see, oh, I went too far. So maybe the best course of action would be to put a little pencil mark for how far down you want to cut, and then be very careful. Anyway, I just flipped the cardstock over because I'm going to ultimately end up cutting some of that edge off anyway to make the file folder that I'm going for. So here, this time I cut down, I didn't cut too far, and you can see now my stamp is going to fit there perfectly in the area that's not cut. And then I can just bring in my scissors here and cut off that little strip that we cut down. Next, I have my scoreboard here, and I am scoring this at 4¼ inches. So that way, when I fold this in half here, it's still gonna be an A2 sized card, but I bet now you can see where I'm going with this, but it's gonna be a file folder. How cool is that? I was patting myself on the back for this. I was really pleased with this idea that came to my head. So I'm going to go ahead and trim off the rest of that strip because I want the front flap of the file folder to be down lower than the back flap. So here we go. Look at that. Beautiful, perfect, love it. To make it a little more realistic, I'll come in with my scissors and angle off the little tab so it looks more like an actual file folder, and I'll get the other side here as well. Added some low tack tape in there to keep the file folder closed while I was stamping. So now I can bring in that sentiment here, the "You're awesome," and stamp it right along that tab. I stamped out a few more things and I'm going to die cut those as well. I've got them kind of laid out here on the card, and now I'm going to stamp her eyes and mouth. There are 2 open eyes and 1 closed eye. So I'm going to do a closed eye and an open eye. The closed eye is going to go where the magnifying glass is not, and I'm going to just sort of tape everything in place here because I don't want to be trying to stamp on things once my card is fully put together, because I'm going to be using some foam tape. So now I can stamp the open eye once I line that up, and you can see it's going to look really awesome beneath the magnifying glass. For her lips, I'm using some more pink. I stamped this a couple of times to really build up the color because I wanted her to have a nice pink lip, but this would look great in red as well. She's so cute. Look, she's all coming together now. Love it. With our gal still in there, I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the magnifying glass, and I'm going to add the hand to it. So this is just so when I finally put it all down with some foam tape, it's going to be where I want it to be. So I picked up the magnifying glass with that glue. Now I've added the foam tape, so everything's going to be kind of in the exact same spot, and then I can adhere it all with the foam tape, and it's just such a fun design. I can't get over how cool this is. I decided to make my file folder look even more realistic. I was really going for it here. So I'm bringing back in my scoreboard, and I'm just going to run a couple of lines along the front flap of the file folder, kind of like on an actual file folder. You have those extra lines there so that you can expand your folder as you add more paper to it. And now I'm going to bring in some Cup of Joe ink. So this is a nice brown. I'm not going to put too much on my brush though, because I don't want it to really be brown. I want it to be more of a kind of beat up old file folder look. So I'm bringing that brown very lightly around the edges of everything until I'm happy. Added foam tape to the whole girl here on the back, and I'm just going to trim off that excess that's coming off of the folder, adding this case closed sentiment here on its side. You don't always have to have your sentiments, going horizontal. They could go vertical as well. I've got a couple of fingerprints here, and so I've popped up the heart fingerprint. How cute is that? And I'm going to glue down the regular style fingerprint. So here is our finished card. It is so cool. I love, love, love how this turned out. I really love the file folder. I hope you guys will try a file folder in your card making adventures. Please be sure to like and subscribe, as well as hit that notification bell so that I can continue to bring you more crafty content in the future. Until next time, happy crafting.